Welcome to the First Five podcast. I'm your host, Michael Corey, and I'm joined by my co-host,
Drew Gotro.
And today in the studio, our guest is a relatively new comic to the scene. He's been at it for a couple years. He's been a featured performer at Ugly Dog in New Orleans, at the Boomerang Show Boombox in Baton Rouge, and he's been a recent competitor on the Lafayette version of Stone Drunk Sober. Please welcome to the podcast, Brennan Robards.
What up? What up?
Gil.
Thank y'all for having me, man. This is awesome.
It's good to have you here, man. I'm really glad it's all worked out. This is sort of a logistical dream that it all just kind of like came together in the best possible way. Very glad to have you. And we just recently found out that we're lucky to have you because you are going to be relocating soon, right?
That is right. Yeah. So I'm going to be relocating to Little Rock, Arkansas, at the beginning of November. It's a great opportunity for me in terms of my career, and I'm looking forward to kind of getting into a new scene and checking out what's going on out there.
So how long have you been doing stand up?
So I've been doing stand up a little less than 2 years. I made a year and a half last month, so just a little bit over, and but in terms of just like really diving into it, I feel like if we're doing like by the terms of reps that you've done, I feel like we're doing dog years, probably like 2 years. You can kind of round up. But yeah,
Okay. So if you're a little over 18 months, we basically started at the exact same time.
Mm-hmm.
So with you relocating, it's interesting because you're already probably in the last 18 months, you've already been a newcomer to a bunch of scenes plenty of times, but quickly gained a reputation for being a hustler who travels and hits as many mics as possible. So that's great. So you really probably go into a new scene. I don't know. It just seems like it's just a natural expansion of what you've been doing.
Yeah, it's excuse me. I think that one of the good things about doing like as many reps and traveling, as much as I did, so to give you like a little bit of context, when I started doing stand up, I resigned from my then job, so I was in between jobs for a few months, and it gave me like the time to be able to do that. So I think that's what kind of had me start traveling to all these different mics and stuff like that. And I didn't realize how good that was, not only to be comfortable in like a new room, but when I went out of state, recently I went to Pensacola, Perdido Key, and did a couple of mics out there. And then I did the open mic Laughing Skull in Atlanta. And when I went to those mics, I realized like, oh, this isn't my first time being like kind of like a fish out of water. Like I feel very comfortable.
Yeah.
It was kind of just not second nature, but close to that. So
I think all three of us have had that experience of being somewhat new comics and then going to Florida for vacation, being like, screw it, let's go hit a mic.
Yeah.
And of course, there's plenty of opportunities out there.
Almost everywhere. I mean, almost anywhere you go, and that's a good thing. I think that we're in a age right now where comedy is so accessible in terms of just like people promoting it. Comedy fans are I feel like growing at this point. It's kind of getting a resurgence because I feel like stand up wasn't as big the past few years as it is now.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I think you're right. Have you had a chance to check out like what your options are as to at least getting started when you go out there?
yeah. So I did. So much like you said, I went up originally for to go up for work and gonna get a feel of do my licensure exam there, and I checked out the two comedy. There's two comedy clubs that, as far as I'm aware right now, do open mics. So there is Looney Bin in Little Rock, which does a mic. I want to say on a Tuesday, and then the Joint Comedy Theater, also in Little Rock, that does a open mic on like a Thursday. So there's like 2 mics a week, showcases on the weekend, stuff like that. They do both those theaters do, or comedy clubs do, showcases throughout the week as well. So there's like a lot of opportunity out there. So I would compare it closely to like Baton Rouge. I feel like that's like the nearest comparison, both in terms of population and in terms of opportunity.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's gonna be awesome just to have a comedy club, much less 2.
Yeah.
If we had a club here, I would be there every day. Like, well, I'd apply for a job. I would work there.
Yeah, it's
That way my wife can't complain. I'm at work. But I'd be there. I would live there.
You're like, no,
Hell
honey,
yeah.
trust me, I'm working. I promise. Like, it's
Yeah, we've got somebody who we think of anybody who would start a comedy club, it might be somebody like Jason. And he's talked about it. I don't know. I mean, I don't know what all is involved in that, so purely from a selfish standpoint, dude, that would be so rad to
yeah.
have a comedy club.
I think if anybody, he has the reputation, and he's been doing this enough with setting up shows at 337. I mean, essentially, he kind of did that with Club 337. When you look at it, he turned a conference room in a hotel into a comedy club that's perfect, that
Mm-hmm.
like New York comics know by name now.
Yeah.
He really, I got a chance to talk to him when he did Bonkers in Baton Rouge a couple weeks ago. And I was asking him about, because one of the things I want to do is I do want to help the Little Rock scene grow a little bit. So one thing I noticed when I went out there was I hit a comedy show, and just went as a guest. I mean, as an audience member, and I noticed that they had three comics, and all three comics were from Memphis, which is a 2-hour drive. So to put it in perspective, that's like going to a Baton Rouge mic and having three Lake Charles comics. It
Yeah.
just it's like it doesn't really it logistically you're like, what's going on here? So I'm gonna
Right.
try to do my best to see if I can have any kind of help with getting that scene moving. And I was talking to him and said, what was the comedy scene in Lafayette like before you started? And he just said, like zero,
Yeah.
nothing. He really started it from the ground up. So much respect for that man, honestly.
Mhm.
So
For sure. He is kind of known for not just with comedy, like anything he's ever gotten involved with, Jason, he has always sort of like thrown himself into it and developed community around it. So I think it's going to take something along those lines to see like whatever you want to do in Little Rock. I would think that it would have to be sort of based on a similar model where like developing more community in the comedy scene.
So his advice, just out of the gate, and this is advice for anybody if you're trying to get, maybe if you're trying to get a comedy scene pushed in your area. He's like, number one thing, get established. And he goes, you don't show up and try to like start a showcase a few months in. Go for like grind for like a year. And he goes, go to the mics, get to know comics, get comics to know you, get a reputation for yourself before you try to promote anything. Because if you kind of just, I mean, and this is something that probably goes over my head and some people's head because it's common sense. But if you go to a place and nobody knows who you are and you just start pushing shows, people get like, I don't know what this guy, I don't know what this
Who
guy's
is this
about.
guy?
Like it's
Mhm.
yeah.
Very
But
typical. Yeah. So, oh, you know what I was going to tell you is, and I don't know if you've done this yet, but Janet Sullivan, she's a Baton Rouge-based comic. She's based in Baton Rouge as far as down here, but she just kind of splits her time between here and New York. I'm just telling the people that don't know, you know this. But Janet Sullivan, one of her kids graduated from college and moved up there, and she went up there to check out the scene. And she's already got comics from up there coming down to Baton Rouge to do showcases.
that's right.
So that's a great person that I would think you'd want to maybe make a connection with. And if I'm not, I'm just looking at, I've got this Dave Stone poster from when Dave Stone was here, and one of his stops is Little Rock.
Mm-hmm.
So there must be stuff going on there.
Yeah, well, Little Rock's a fine town.
Yeah.
It's
That's
beautiful.
Lieutenant Dan said that.
He was not wrong. He was not wrong. But no, I did get a chance to talk to her this past Wednesday at the station in Baton Rouge, and we talked about that. And she's most of her stuff she does is in Fayetteville, which is where the University of Arkansas is located. And so uh she basically is going like a little bit further up north,
Mhm.
but she said that like she's gonna, we'll keep in touch. She says she'll be traveling through there a lot more.
Yeah.
So definitely, she's definitely somebody. We already like follow each other on social media. We're friends. Like we've hung out enough to where we'll definitely like link up and try to get some stuff going in terms of like checking out. She goes, I need you to check out the clubs there and let me know what's going on there so that way I can pop in there and I'll do the same for the other ones that up north Arkansas. So
She seems like a great resource for
absolutely.
networking. She's a hustler too. I remember the first time I met her, she handed me her business card, and she was because she was doing yoga instructing, I believe.
Oh, okay. I thought it was a
Yeah.
comedy business card. I
No.
was like, what?
Well, I think it's probably doubling now that I'm thinking about it. But yeah, it was it was for yoga.
I can think of like 3 people locally. If you told me they had a comedy business card, I would believe it.
By the way,
Yeah.
speaking of which, no, I'm kidding.
I think we know one for sure that does. He who will not be named. But so that kind of brings me to your reputation as a hustler. Now, this snuck up on me. Like I think there was a point where I kind of stopped going to Baton Rouge, so we stopped crossing paths, and then your name started coming up all of a sudden, and everybody was like, the word had gotten out that you were hitting as many mics as possible, which is what every comic should be doing, especially if you're young and single.
Yeah.
But it was impressive because you kind of stand out from the crowd as somebody who's working at a lot harder, it seems like, than most of the other comics, especially out in the Baton Rouge area. But you were strategically located. You know, Lake Charles was probably the biggest run. You could go to Lafayette, Baton Rouge, or New Orleans, or some of those smaller markets outside of New Orleans, and really rack up stage time by being sort of centrally located there. So anyway, it snuck up on me. I didn't realize that you had been working so hard while I was just kind of like, I don't know, probably developing this project and not paying attention.
Oh, I appreciate it.
But everybody else noticed. And so I was like, all right, man, good for you. And then I started hearing about you. You've had like a run of bookings lately, right?
Yeah. You know, keep bashing your head against a brick wall. Eventually, you start chipping away at it a little bit. But yeah, you know, I got a few bookings. And it's great because the people that had me on are people that, like, even though I'm not like super close to them, they're like, you know what, I've seen you've been putting in the work. You deserve an opportunity, and that's like something that I think is when you get it for the first time, it just it's awesome. And I'm fine with so the reason that I started doing all these different mics, it's not a really fun uh, origin story. So what happened was, as I mentioned, I resigned from my old job. I was in between jobs. Aside from like, you know, uh, walking my dog on the lakes and like working out, hanging out with my friends maybe once a week. I went from like a super social setting to like not having any kind of social activity whatsoever.
Yeah.
And so I started doing mics. I was doing three is my normal now. When I was in between jobs, I was doing 3 to 5, usually 4 a week. And I would do so the schedule was Monday was either Silly Rabbit or 12 Mile Limit. Tuesday, Atmosphere, Wednesday Station, Thursday JSP, and then Legends, and Friday Ugly Dog. Those are, so I'll try to hit 4 of those 5. And then I did 5 for a couple weeks. Very taxing, but I think if you're serious about this, do it. I think try to push yourself for a week, maybe 2 weeks, and you're gonna be amazed at how much progress you make from doing that. So
Yeah, especially if you're using that time as strategically as possible, because if you're just flailing up there and trying a bunch of different stuff, trying to figure out, I mean, that could be useful. But if you're using that time to hammer on the same 5 to 10 minutes and honing that, something that sort of Tyler would probably suggest that you do, that could be incredibly useful. What have you found? Like anything in particular that you would say was something that stands out that you noticed from all that experience?
so so one thing I always have trouble doing is like starting out a set, and just starting out like the initial thought. One thing I tried to do one time when I did the 5 mics and 5 nights thing, was I would try to call attention to the room, maybe do a little bit of crowd work. Like I try to make a unique. I'm like, all right, your opener. It's just like normally now I have like a set opener, usually a set closer. If I'm just doing like a 5 minute open mic, but when I was doing a few different rooms, I'd be like, okay, address the room, whether it's the crowd or the setup itself. Like kind of make myself think and kind of flex those, like, I guess improvising muscles or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, I think ultimately just the more reps you do, the more comfortable you get on stage. I was really hoping that it was going to be a gradual me getting comfortable on stage thing. I started recording my sets, like filming it, and it literally happened like overnight. Like I did three mics back to back to back, did the same 5 minutes, and on between a Tuesday and a Wednesday, it was like night and day, and I'm like, okay. And so when younger comics are like, how do you get comfortable on stage? I'm like, I don't tell them it'll happen overnight, but I'm like, it'll just happen. It's just gonna, before you know it, it'll
Yeah.
just happen.
And you kind of have to do some of the like the shitty rooms every now. You know what I mean? Like some of the rooms where there's no one there, or even just have some bad sets.
I could write a book on how many
really
bad mics I've
helps
done.
Yeah, you probably get more out of bad sets than good sets, maybe.
And I just want to disclaimer it. The bad mics I'm specifically referring to are the ones that are not still going on. So when I started out and doing a few different mics, these mics are. I'll leave a little hint because I know somebody that's listening used to run a mic in Baton Rouge. It's not that one. It's none of them have been in Baton Rouge. I'm talking specifically in New Orleans, but
yeah, fuck New Orleans.
No. Hey man, I'm born and raised there. Come on.
No.
No. All right. But there was a good piece of advice is if you're starting out, don't bring your friends. It's not going to be helpful at all. I brought friends because they wanted to see me, and I don't invite people, but if people ask, I'm not going to tell them no. You know, so I remember they would show up, and kind of like you were saying, like just these kind of crappy rooms where there's like literally 14 people, and 5 of them are people that you brought. So it's just, and then the rest are all comics, and you're like, this is woof. All right, well, you just gotta have to power through it.
Yeah,
but
I can find there's several things wrong with it.
Yeah.
For one thing, if you're brand new, you suck, and all your friends are seeing it. But another thing, there was a guy at Artmosphere a while back that came, and I don't know if it was his first time or what. I think it was, or close to it. And he brought a bunch of friends with him. And nothing he said up there made any fucking sense to anyone in the room, but his friends were like just laughing, and I'm just thinking like, this is not helping this guy at all.
Yeah.
And I guess they're laughing like maybe they're inside jokes between him and the friends.
Yeah.
But dude, you didn't have to come all the way out here to do that. You could have stayed. You could have did that at your house.
Yeah, dude.
You know, like
buy a karaoke machine.
and then they would like talk through everybody else. You know what I mean? They didn't give a shit about anybody else's set, but because they were only there for his.
Leave right after he got off stage, probably, something like that.
I mean, we were. I was hoping, dude, they would fucking leave.
Yeah. Honestly, it was that? Oh man, that's rough, dude. No, so most of my friends and family live in New Orleans. So when I was doing Ugly Dog, when I started out, like you mentioned, I sucked. Like, I mean, it was just like the first few months, you just don't know what you're doing. You're kind of trying to find. Your own path, your own voice on stage, everything like that. And I was bringing like at the most, once I started doing it regularly, I was bringing like 15 people a night, and that's like a decently sized room, but that still takes up like a third of the room.
Yeah.
So you're getting that fake feedback. So like I didn't want my jokes to work because my friends and family were in the audience. I wanted my jokes to work because they work.
Yeah.
And I think that's another reason don't bring your friend. The best advice I ever got, my favorite comic, Kyle Kinane, I got to meet him after he did the show at 337, and he said, don't bring your friends. He goes, when I started out doing comedy, I brought one friend, and it was the one friend that wanted me to fail at comedy. And he goes, that would be the best advice I would give to somebody else. Like, if you want to bring a friend that does not want you to do well, just so you can, power through that adversity,
I love it. I think there's like a concentric circle thing there, because first, if you bring somebody who's going to be supportive, that's your first level of sort of like not good feedback. Then as you start to make friends with the comics, if they're like, I think that some people probably didn't give me honest feedback once we became friends for a little while because I was so fragile. And so they probably didn't for a while, but now they do. And then the other thing is you can sort of master a room where, the comics that are there respect you, the regulars respect you. And then you go to a different kind of room for the first time. You're like, oh, why is this any different from, 30 miles away at the other place? Why is it just a minor cultural difference and suddenly none of my jokes work anymore? Right. And so, yeah, there's always bigger layers of like, all right, now I kind of need it to be a little bit more universal than it is right now.
Right.
And obviously you can't ever get to a point where everybody's going to like you. But
the funnest part of stand-up is making complete strangers laugh.
Yeah.
To me, like
100%.
that's the best thing is like making people laugh that don't know you.
Mhm.
You know, you're like I've got family and they keep every time we have like a get together at my grandmother's, they're like, "Why don't you do it for us?" I'm like, "No, this would never happen. It would never ever happen. If you want to see it, come see it."
Right.
Yeah.
Because I've been doing it. First of all, it's not going to work. It's the wrong context to be doing bits to you.
Right. Right. Like,
But as far as being funny, you've known me my whole life. Like, y'all know I'm funny. I
Yeah.
don't need to prove to y'all I'm funny.
Right.
If anything, I would rather what I would like you to see,
Mhm.
like, come to 337 and watch me like kill in a room and see. Like, that's the thing I think would impress them more than you've heard me tell jokes.
Yeah.
I want you to see what I can do to people who don't know me.
Yeah, it is and there you have that detachment where if it goes great, that's amazing. You made a bunch of strangers laugh. If it doesn't go great, you're like, sweet, never seeing y'all again. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? It's
they're-
just like you just
They're
peace
not
out.
gonna,
You know?
yeah, they're not gonna. They don't remember the guy that bombed.
How many times do you think you've been at a show and some complete stranger was like, "Hey, Drew, I saw you at blah blah blah." Has that
happens
happened?
a good bit. Yeah.
Oh, it does. Oh, okay,
It
I've only had
happens in
happen a couple
places
times.
outside of shows.
Oh crap. Okay, well that's because
Yeah.
you're good. With me,
I mean, it kind of just started not that long ago when they did Stone Drunk Sober at Showbox, the one you were on.
Mhm.
Remember, Kenny was on that, and people were asking to take pictures with him after.
Oh my
And
god.
I was like, man, that's so cool. No one's ever asked me to take a picture.
Oh, dude.
And it was felt like my mom was right there, and she'd been drinking. She's like, "I'll take a picture with you." I was like, "No, I don't."
I got pictures with
I was
you.
like, "No, you. I don't want to take a fucking picture of you."
Oh my god, that's
No, man.
hilarious.
But yeah, but it's cool. Like I remember thinking at the time, like that'd be cool. And now I've had people like we were at Tap Room in River Ranch,
Okay.
and somebody was like, "Hey, you're that comedian." And I was like, "That's cool, man."
Yeah,
Mhm.
it's good getting recognized. I mean, I've only literally gotten it twice, and it was pretty cool because the first time I was doing this mic in New Orleans, and then I went to 51st Jokes at JSP, and somebody recognized me. I was like talking and just like, "Oh man, I love it." And they named the joke, and that's pretty cool because like if you have a joke that sticks with somebody, and then they reference it to you later,
Yeah,
that is pretty cool.
Yeah.
But I just feel like it happens in a minority of the time. At least because I mean, if I'm just doing a bunch of different mics, just I don't know. But the thing about not knowing people, so I got I'm gonna see him later on this afternoon, so I'm gonna put him on blast right now. One of my friends, Cody, turned 30, and for his birthday party, him and his family are huge comedy fans, and I got cornered at the bar, and I knew what they were gonna ask, and they're like, "Hey, when the band takes a break, they had live music going on. When the band takes a little 15-minute break, we need you to jump up there and do some comedy for everybody." I go, "No, I'm not doing it. No." I'm like,
Yeah.
my palms are sweating just from telling this story. And I was like, it's not going to go well. And Cody hit me with the thing I can't turn down. He's like, "Come on, man. It's for my birthday." I'm like, all right. So,
Yeah, I asked about the pay because the band's getting paid.
No, I mean, yes. I mean, I should have.
I mean, what the fuck?
I mean, but no, the band was cool. Band gave me a great intro, and I was very nervous before, and it was fine. It went great. But the reason I was nervous, and everybody's like, "Brennan, you've done this like a million times. You got it. You know, it's a problem." I go, "The problem is I know every single person here,
Yeah.
and I see y'all regularly. Like, if this goes bad,
it's pretend. Like
yeah. It's like if this goes bad, I'm gonna see y'all probably next month. You know what I mean? It's just like
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just like I like doing it in front of strangers. So
You ever have somebody recognize you because they saw you somewhere else and
Like-
then tell you about a joke and it's not your joke?
I have not had that. I have done that. So one of my things is I remember I have every comic that I've seen enough. I'll remember their favorite joke, and I did that recently at a comedy event that I was booked on with a comic that looked a lot like another comic, and I gave him the joke, and he goes, "That's not my joke," and I'm like, "I am so sorry."
Yeah, when Jeff Dye was here, me after the show, we went to Tap Room, and Tyler and I were just talking, and we were talking about how good Jeff was and all this, and I was like, "Yeah, man," and it's like this was one of my favorite jokes he had. I liked, and I started telling Tyler one of his old jokes, And I started telling Tyler the joke. And then later we're talking with Jeff, and Tyler's like, yeah, Drew brought up this joke you had, and starts telling me. Then immediately I just start thinking, I sure fucking hope that is his joke. Like, I'm like 99% sure, but things can get scrambled in your head. I'm like, oh my God, please, I hope he's not telling this guy
Oh,
that I just told the wrong joke. You know what I mean? And it'd be like someone he hates too, you know?
so I mean,
Yeah.
so was it the right joke? Or?
It was.
Okay, good.
Yeah,
because
then
that's
he-
good save. I was like, oh
Because it
man.
was Tyler started telling it, and he's like, yeah. And then he finished the joke.
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah, that's what, he's like, I love that joke.
What a relief.
Yeah. I was like, thank God.
Don, he won the last Stone Drunk Sober, so he came back to the one that you were on to they come back the next one, and Josh Ewing is there,
Yeah.
and so somebody apparently walked up to Ewing and complimented him.
No.
They don't look anything alike either.
That's so
I know.
bad,
And
dude.
then I think Ewing made like a really good joke. He's like, "Man, Don did so good, I got a compliment or something." Like that.
That's awesome, man.
It's really funny.
That's great, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Speaking of which, I think some congratulations are in order. I'm going to go ahead and give you another applause.
Yeah,
You're on a winning team. Your first
y'all.
ever
Yeah,
Stone
you
Drunk
son of a
Sober.
bitch.
I didn't want to.
Drunk.
I was like, man, Drew will bury me. Well, Drew got booked. Got put in last minute. It was a last minute cancellation, and Drew went up, dude. Arguably best set I think you've ever done. Like you delivered, and I was like, oh, Drew will get him warmed up, and then you went up and crushed, and I'm like, all right, well, crap, I gotta go follow that. But no, shout out to Terrence Delane, my partner. He is Baton Rouge-based comic, hilarious dude, somebody I actually like really look up to in terms of comedy.
Mhm.
Hilarious, dude. I mean, just I feel like I was talking to Drew about this before the podcast. I mean, you were there. I feel like we can agree. I feel like everybody brought their A game.
Mhm.
Maggie and Don even opening up the show.
For sure.
Jason. I mean, everybody that was on the show, I feel like brought their best set. I mean,
Mhm.
everybody, the crowd was just eating it up and being a great audience. So, I mean, I don't really think there's anything else we could have asked for. I'm very, very happy to, I'm going to be honest with you. I did not think I was going to win. Because I saw the lineup and I saw the
no,
talent.
you said it a bunch of times before.
Yeah, that's how I psych myself up, man. You know, I'm like, I'm not gonna win. No, watch this. No, I don't know. That's not true. But no, man, I just no because like the lineup was stacked, and I was fortunate enough to be on not just a great competition, but a stacked competition in terms of talent.
Yeah.
It was anybody's game when Will Lawden, Houston-based comic, was up there murdering.
Yeah.
Terrence and I were at the bar like, well,
Mm-hmm.
we lost. Like, you know what I mean? We
To
were
be
just
honest,
sitting
I
there.
really thought that was what was going to happen. I was like, regardless how anybody does, I think Will's going to go up there and he's going to, by himself, he's going to single-handedly win the whole thing.
Yeah, because he's last.
Right.
And
it's loud, yeah.
I find he's got, I mean, I don't know much about him, but I think he's got more miles than the rest of us.
By far.
It looks that way when you see him do stand-up.
By far. He's
I mean,
been in a minute, yeah.
He
sorry.
came to Artmosphere a while back before I didn't really know who he was. And he came and he brought someone with him. I forgot who it was. And at the time I was feeling really confident and good about myself as far as comedy goes. And both of them, when they went up, and I remember thinking like, yeah, I need to step my game up. Like there's a huge gap here between what I do and what they do.
Mhm.
You know, like I need, yeah, like it humbled me a lot. You know,
Yeah. I mean, everybody needs that. But I mean, on the bright side, like, I feel like, do you feel like in 5 years, you're going to be looking back and being like, well, I closed the gap up quite a bit. You know what I mean?
I
feel
hope
like,
so.
yeah, I think that.
Because I already feel now, like when we were talking about like when you bring in friends to mics, how stupid it is. Because like when I was like 2 months in, I was thinking like, man, you know, I'm pretty good at this, you know. And if I go back and watch or listen to any of those sets, I'm like, man, I was not very good. I was like, if anything, I think I was getting laughs and stuff, and a lot of the praise from other comedians was like, you're doing good for a guy who's 2 months in, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I guess you kind of need a little bit of delusion to keep going, because if I really knew where I stood back then, I don't know if I would have been able to keep going.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that self-awareness is like, because you are, I promise I'll quit kissing your ass. You are very funny. Like, I mean, that's
Yeah,
the thing.
no,
Like,
it's
you're gonna
okay.
be,
You can
you know.
do it.
He's like, I'm fine with this. Go ahead. No more.
Yeah.
But no, but I think you're right. I mean, I have, so I started recording my stuff. I stopped for a little bit, and then I picked it back up in January of this year, and so I've been, but I listened back to the first recordings when I started out. So I did the Mark Norman thing where I went, even though it's from New Orleans, living in Baton Rouge. I went to Lafayette because I didn't want anybody to know me, and I still remember Jason's intro. It's one of the best ones that he brought me up. Just my memory is insane in terms of jokes, and he I listened to recordings from back then, and I want to put my head through drywall. It's so it makes me want to like jump off a building. I'm like, this is horrible, you know. But like, yeah, I listen to him now, and I'm like, this is, I see the progress, and filming yourself, you
Yeah.
see it. But yeah, I feel like 99% of creators like loathe the stuff they made 2 years ago or whatever, and then the other 1% are probably lying,
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I think you're right. That's a shared sentiment.
Yeah, I don't even want to go back and listen to old episodes of this podcast, to be honest. Just for myself, you know what I mean?
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't have a choice, but so when I first found out that you got like what the teams were going to be, I don't know, this was like 6 weeks ago or something like that. I called it for you guys right off the bat. Now I didn't know, obviously we couldn't know that Drew was going to be on the show at the last minute, but I looked at the teams and I just didn't know the other than Will. I was like not real familiar with the other comics. And so I looked at that lineup and was like, dude, and frankly, sometimes one person carries the other one over the finish line when they win. That just happens sometimes.
Thanks, Terrence.
But I looked at it and I saw, I've actually taken the stats from Jason's entire catalog of people and analyzed them to see who has the best, not just who's literally won the most number, but also who wins the most out of the ones that they do.
Mm-hmm.
And Terrence stands out as probably top 10 in terms of statistically. He's won more of the ones he's done than most of the other comics. And that's just Lafayette.
He's also won the championship tournament too.
There you go.
Yeah.
So I figured, but that does not mean that you couldn't have gone up there and done poorly and fucked it up for y'all's team. Like you could have gone up there and still, yeah. And so I didn't get
the night for everybody.
I didn't get to see.
I mean, it could have happened to Terrence. It could have happened to Terrence. Terrence could have went up and just.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it can happen to anyone.
Absolutely, at any time, for sure. But I didn't get to see either one of y'all's sets working the door. But I could tell from what I could hear that you were doing well enough between the two of y'all. If he had a typical set, that y'all had a real shot at winning. But I kind of just from the beginning, I was like, they have a real shot. As soon as I found out y'all were going to be on a team together.
I think if I'm being honest, I think I was in a good position in terms of my spot in the lineup. I think I was at a spot where it was just warmed up enough in terms, like the crowd was just warmed up enough, but they weren't tired yet. So I was like, honestly, I don't think I could have picked a better spot in this lineup. I think I got prime. And then Terrence went up and like leveled, and I'm like, man. And then, but like I said, everybody brought their A game. Everybody had a great set. So
absolutely,
it was really. I think Drew was saying this when we were, hanging out after we did our sets, and he goes, "It's anybody's game," or I think you said something like that. So
and it was great. Like I followed, like what you're saying. I feel the same way. Like it was like the perfect spot where it wasn't so late in the show. The show was just getting started. Don was up there murdering. Don ended up going a little bit long, and like probably halfway through his set or before, I told Garrett, I'm like, he's gonna go long because this set is not timed for this. People were laughing. He had to sit and wait so long for people to stop laughing because there's no way they would have heard what he was saying. And he's murdering. And Garrett Abear was standing next to me, and I told Garrett, I was like, this is great for me. So first things first, he's not competing. So that's great because he's fucking murdering right now. And I was like, I'm going to ride that. Like, I'm going to take full advantage of the fact he's murdering right now. And I just remember thinking, like, I hope Jason doesn't talk much.
Right.
In between. Like, I hope they can get him off the stage and get me on as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
In terms of being like, in terms of hosting a show, honestly, Jason, you're in good hands.
Yeah.
I don't picture him as a host that would run like oh man, that was really good. All right, well, let me break out a 5-minute set.
Yeah,
I don't think
he
he'd do
knows
anything like that.
enough about it to know
Yeah.
not to cool off the audience. Yeah,
Right.
Yeah.
Some people don't. Some people will go up there and they'll
Cool.
do 15 minutes in between comedians.
God, cooling off the audience is literally the best way you can put that. Honestly, it's
Yeah.
I've seen it happen so many times. The
someone
momentum is just
someone
going.
kills, murders, the audience is great, and then they go up there and start talking
Put it in
about
So dating's weird.
talking about
and
their
they're like,
fucking kids or something. Yeah. For 15 minutes, for 10
Oh,
minutes
man.
or whatever.
Yeah, dude.
I saw somebody do that one time. Me and Ken Edwards did a show, and Ken was about to go up. So like Ken gets all in this zone, like he's like shadow boxing and stuff. And then the host went up there and did several minutes, and I could tell like he's getting pissed because he's like, I'm trying to hold this
Energy.
energy right now, you
Yeah.
know, like get me up there, you
Put me
know?
in there,
Yeah, he's like a fucking like a car you've got wound up all the way and you're just holding it.
Yeah.
Fucking let him go.
Yeah,
Mhm.
it's so I'm gonna leave this place unnamed, but I did a mic recently that I went with a Baton Rouge comic to it, and we were like spot 15 and 16 on this open mic, and the host is a great comedian, but he was doing 5 to 7 minutes in between each set. So the mic started at 9.
Yeah, that's
I
too
didn't go
long
on
to do
stage until
regardless.
10:30.
Yeah.
Like it was crazy. I didn't go on stage till like 10:30, 10:45. Aaron Heltz went, great comic from Baton Rouge. He went up right after me too, and it was to the point where when you said cooling off, because it was exactly what happened. It's like the crowd is already kind of small. The host was cooling them off constantly. So, and then Aaron and I went up there and like jolted him back to life. Like it brought the energy back in the room, because it's like, it was just like so dead. And that's why it's like, if you're a host, just do your 5 minutes to start off, and then be like, man, that's going great. Your next comic. And then, or thing that was pretty cool, Garrett Abear. I was actually giving him props last night. Probably one of the best hosts that I've got a chance to be on stage with, and that run shows. But we had a comic not do so hot right before I went up at the station Wednesday, and he goes, "Let's get a little palate cleanser," and he just did one joke, and it brought that back.
Yeah, that's the way to do it.
And
yeah.
the joke, I don't remember the exact joke, but he basically was like, it was a corny joke, and he goes, "I need y'all to boo after I say this joke," and he did the joke, and everybody's like, "Boo!" And I just lean over to Trent Manning, and I'm like, excuse me, I lean over to Trent Manning, and I'm like, wouldn't it be hilarious if I just go up there and like bomb, because they're already in practice? You know what I mean? Like, it's fine. So
Yeah, I think as a host, your job is, it's not about you. You're supposed to set up the next comedian. You're supposed, so like if this comedian did well, they're laughing, bring the next one up as fast as you can. Bring them up. Now, if they had a rough set, if the audience is like kind of distracted and stuff, say what you got to say to bring them back in it. Once you have them paying attention, get the fuck off the stage, because the only thing, you have them where you want it. The only thing you're doing now is taking a chance of losing them again.
Absolutely right.
So when you got them where you need them, bring up the next comedian.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Whenever Jason got up at the end to do the voting, the first time he went and said everybody's names and then went through like the first round of voting, it seemed really close.
Yeah, they had a bunch
agree.
of people just clapping for everyone. I could see them too. Like,
Yeah.
bitch, you fucking clap for every person. It's like, I guess they're like, well, I don't want to be rude, mean or whatever.
Yeah, I tried to do everything to win that competition though. I brought a dog in a tuxedo, and they sat up front. It was like, I don't know if you noticed it when you're on stage, but
I didn't notice the tuxedo till you pointed out to
it's
me
white
later,
and blended in,
That dog was the theme of the whole night.
Yeah, that was shout out Louis, is the dog's name, but he's the goodest boy. Yeah, it was very close, and like, I mean, yeah, honestly, I think it really could have been anyone's game in terms of how that ended up. So,
man, I did think, just not to beat a dead horse, but when Will got up and finished with the way he did, I was like, ooh,
dude.
man, I don't know what's gonna happen.
He has by far the longest mileage, and like kind of like Drew said, in terms of like just the whole lineup. He, just a man playing amongst children. You know what I mean? Just like he was
Right.
so experienced in terms of like
Yeah,
his.
and his jokes too. It feels like if someone tried to steal one of his jokes, you would catch him right away. You know, there's no fucking parallel thinking on the
Right.
premises and the types of jokes he has. You know what I mean? Where it's like,
Mhm.
no, two people aren't gonna both have that same thought.
Right.
Yeah.
You
Right.
know, it's
Mhm.
so him and so original.
Mhm.
I'm wondering if, and I don't know because I haven't got enough time in yet, but I'm wondering if like you get to a level after a certain number of years that you just start. You don't do just like vague stuff that everybody does. Like everybody likes to talk about dating. Like the number of times I've gone up and I've heard like like sex jokes, dating jokes, trying to think of other used premises that are used to death. I'm wondering if you hit like a certain level where you just stop using those premises and then you start. I notice a lot of other comics will, a lot of more experienced comics will do like stories about what happened to them. Hey, so this happened to me last week,
Hmm.
and on paper, you're like, this isn't going to be funny, but the way they present it is like
Mhm.
hilarious, and nobody can steal it because it happened to them.
Right.
So.
Yeah,
100%,
I
dude.
think probably. I think what it's gonna like I used to stress out a lot about like pretty much everything I have being dirty.
Mm,
And but I think what it is, I don't stress about it so much because I think I just thought I'm like I'm just gonna have to write and write, and I'm just gonna have to get that out of my system.
mm.
I think if I get through that, I'll get to a point, and it's kind of happened. Like I do have jokes now
Yeah.
that aren't really dirty
I think
jokes.
I think if I had to.
I have some that I have like some profanity, but if I have to, I can remove the profanity. Like the only reason I even keep the profanity in there rather than take it out is because that's how I talk.
Yeah, I think that if I had to, because I've seen you do stand up enough. Like we see each other, weekly. It's pretty
Hmm.
much like that's why one thing I like
Yeah,
being on this
minimum
podcast
of
is it.
yeah,
Yeah, but I feel like if I had to like quantify your set or like put it in categories and stuff, I would say, yeah, you have some sexual stuff. I think when you started out, you had more. But even back then, I think that you were focusing on that, whereas you had other jokes, you just probably weren't thinking about it. You're focusing too much on that one category of jokes that you had. But now you have a wide range of different stuff you talk
yeah,
about, and you honestly just have like a way to swerve on stage. Just makes it
yeah. And
really good too.
I think that a related thing to this is like I think I have to just get through that stuff, and my material will diversify the more I write. And I've said this on this podcast a lot, where like I've never gotten anything out of like scheduling time to sit down and
We
write,
talked about yeah.
but I've started to think about it a different way because recently I heard Anthony Jeselnik was talking about it, and he said he does that. And lots of times he doesn't get anything out. You don't,
Yeah.
right, really don't get anything out of it. Maybe say if like in a week, say if 7 days you schedule time every day to write,
Hmm.
you might only get a joke one of those days, and you
Yeah.
might only get a minute, 60 seconds
Hmm.
out of a whole week of writing. He said, but you still have to do it because you have to dig through the bad ideas to find the good ones.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So now I'm
100%.
rethinking this whole thing. Like, you know what? I think I really do need to schedule more time, carve out time to write, even if the page is still blank after this time is done or whatever. Or if I usually that doesn't happen. Usually I'll write something, but it's just fucking terrible. When I schedule. But maybe I need to do it. Maybe I need to write this terrible, keep writing, getting through this terrible stuff
Yeah, I think
and get to the good stuff. I don't know if I talked about this recently on here or not.
well,
I don't think
me and
so.
you talked about it at
Yeah, I talked to
Legends.
it for sure off stage.
Yeah,
Yeah,
off
I mean
stage at
off
Legends.
pod. Yeah.
Yeah, we talked about how because I was just getting back from I had to take a break, so I was sick, and we had to. Well, no, I was talking about how I had to take. I took 2 hours the 2 weeks out. So I was sick for 2 weeks, both weekends. I took 2 hour blocks and I got nothing done. Like I got one joke out of those 4 hours. And it was like, I do like the joke, but with the way I feel like the writing process works for me, it comes in bursts. So when I try to force it, I don't get anything done. But then I'll have like a week where I'm like, oh, this is a really good idea. Oh, and this is also a good idea. And then I'll go a couple weeks without having like those again. And then I'll happen
Hmm.
again. So it comes in waves for me. And that's how I'm starting to like,
I mean, that's pretty much how I'm.
yeah.
Things just get put most of my premise or an idea for a bit doesn't come to me when I'm writing comedy. I'm doing something else, and then I'll just think of something.
You're like, you're
that's
driving.
funny.
You're like, oh crap! Let me jot this down on my phone real quick.
Mhm.
You know.
Yeah, I think I've been thinking about Tyler and his approach, and he talked about having an act, and a part of that is having a bunch of interconnected jokes that call back to one another, and then when you stand back and look at the thing as a whole, it's almost like an episode of a TV show or something, and it has an arc. I'm looking at my stuff right now. We have this show coming up on Monday night, and it's going to be probably the first time that I've done like a 15-minute spot. Anytime I've done a 15 or anything more than a 10-minute spot in the past has been a mistake on the part of whoever gave me that opportunity in the first place. Of course, I'm going to say yes, but you know, this is going to be the first time that I've had an opportunity to do 15 minutes.
That's hilarious that you put the blame on them for booking you in the
that's why I started laughing. I was like,
he's like, I mean, I'm going to say yes, so it's not on me. You should have known better.
Well, it's true. Ask anybody who knows.
You got to give yourself more credit, man.
Those long spots, like I think I got like a 25-minute boomerang spot to headline a show, and I did 25 minutes worth of jokes. There wasn't like big dead spots or dragged out things in between, but just the jokes themselves were just sometimes they were hit and miss.
Yeah.
But anyhow, this is going to be the first opportunity I've had to do 15 minutes where it actually makes sense, because I've developed a new 10 minutes over the last 4 months or so. And then I've got this main thing I've been working on for a long time, that masculinity joke. You put it all together, that's 15 minutes. So I have 15 minutes of material that I'm looking forward to doing. But the thing I'm looking at it, and I'm noticing that the whole like, oh, femininity and is he gay speculation thing is a big theme in like the first half of it. Mm-hmm. And then it transitions into, but anyway, I'm not. And let me tell you about my life as like a boring married guy and a dad. And so there is an arc and a story to it. And so I want to develop an act like Tyler does, but I don't want, it comes with certain, sometimes it just hamstrings you. Every once in a while, there'll be like something about the having an act as opposed to a bunch of, you know, like Lego pieces of jokes that you could arrange in any order you want and not worry about callbacks to jokes you're not even going to tell that night.
You have to, I think you're going to have to get the, because I'm pretty sure this is probably how it happened for Tyler anyway. You're going to have to work on it a block at a time as far as working on a joke at a time, but don't be thinking about, oh, these jokes have to go together.
Right.
Once you'll have enough, like you said, it's kind of seems like it's already happening for you. And it kind of, I've noticed it kind of happens for me already.
Yeah.
Where I have all these jokes that they were just ideas that came individually. Mm-hmm. But now if you take them and if you kind of move them around and put them in a certain order, they kind of go into each other, to where I can see how it's very possible in the future this will be an act, you know, as I write more jokes where I'll be able to fit things together,
and it'll tell a story ultimately.
Yeah, it's like it's a thing that'll just happen organically if you pay attention to it.
So like the thing, I've gotten this compliment the past 3 times on like my booked stuff, and I really like this compliment. Basically, I would get off and the show would be over and be shaking hands after or whatever with people, and someone would say, "I really like your set because you were just having a conversation with us." Like you were, and what I mean by that is just like it flows. Like I think that my organization in terms of my set was more reflective of my past 2 sets versus my Stone Drunk Sober set. But I attribute that to me being on Team Drunk. So, but with that being said, like, I do think it flows. I do think it's like something that when you put that level of organization and it just flows naturally like a conversation, you present it more like a presentation. That's what I think bumps it up to being an act. Right. And I will say from like going to Tyler. So you guys mentioned on the podcast, I went to a Skankfest in Las Vegas with Tyler, and where he was performing, there was a very wide range of skill sets on stage. But when he went up, him and like a handful of other comics just had it organized to where they knew, like, I've seen Tyler, we talked about his jokes, so I knew what organization, how much work he put in, and you can see that reflective on his act. You could see that reflective. A handful of comics had an act versus just going up and like, all right, what else? Like, I hate when I hear
just
that on
pull
stage.
it from their trick bag.
Right.
Yeah, I like Yeah, we're used to doing 10-minute things. When you can get to a point where you can do an hour, when you see people that do an hour really good, it's almost like so you don't even really notice going from one bit to another. It's almost like the whole hour is like one bit and the other bits just feel like sometimes could feel like you're getting distracted. Sort like Jim Jeffries is great at that.
Yeah.
Where
Mhm.
what he starts talking about in the beginning, he's for sure going to come to in the end, and then he might come back in a few times in between. And all the other bits, they fit into what he's talking. But it's almost like when you're having a conversation with someone and you're trying to say something, and the next thing you know, you're way over here, and then you think about it later in the shower, like I didn't even tell them the thing I wanted to tell them.
Yeah.
He does get to it in the end, but that's what it feels like when you're listening to him. It feels
Mhm.
like he's just getting sidetracked, you know. And
Yeah.
he'll acknowledge it sometimes where he'll be talking about trans people, and then he's like, "Yeah, so that's why I don't eat cheese."
Yeah.
You know,
It's
Right.
like-
so, yeah,
And
That's
audiences always love that.
yeah,
Yeah.
But whenever you see, usually I see it in specials, that's where this really shines. But yeah, they love it when you just go down what seems like a rabbit hole and then you suddenly tie it back into your main
yeah. And it's
thought line.
extremely deliberate, but doesn't feel like it is.
Yeah.
One of my favorite like so it's a Louis C.K. bit about him being, I want to say he's at CVS, and he has like this long bit and he kind of rips on CVS and he talks about something with his wife and he just rants about his wife for like 5-10 minutes and he's just so aggravated, he's so angry, and he goes, so anyway, I'm in line at CVS, like I said, and everybody's like, "Oh right, I forgot where this started," you know. And it's just like
So
he
great.
just ties right back in like he never left, and it's just
Mhm.
it's such a great swerve that that I think a lot of comics that just if you have that, I think it's a good thing to have on stage, just being able to tie it back in, like you said, you know. So
Yeah. So I wanted to see, we're going to have Tyler eventually come back and talk about his Skankfest experience, but is there anything that you can tell us about your experience of being there with him that's kind of like a unique Brennan story?
like in terms what
Just
in
any
terms of
story.
just
Any story from being there that
Or
sort
even
of,
maybe a story about Tyler that he didn't tell us.
yeah.
No. Tyler was fine all night. He got to gamble with Mark Normand for a few
Yeah.
hours late at, like, you know, they were killing it on the roulette table, so that was pretty good. Happy for him. Um, but in terms of that, I will just say that so for those of you that don't know, there's this festival in Las Vegas. It's going to be in Tampa next year. It's called Skankfest. From the Legion of Skanks podcast, a New York comics based podcast. So a lot of New York comics. Been a huge fan of that scene for a while. The festival, unironically, was the most fun weekend I've had in my entire 29 years of living.
That's
Like
awesome.
this was it's a 3-day long party. Um Everybody's there to do comedy. They rented out this place called Levity Live. It's a building that's essentially like these three parts. Essentially, it's almost like three buildings. They have all these different stages. They did podcasts. They had free tattoos. They got sanctioned fights. They had a boxing ring in the middle, down in the middle of this little like it's like kind of like a mall area kind of thing. And it was just insane amount of people. Um when I initially got added as a plus one, I was assuming, okay, well, you're just gonna go there and get free admission and crash at a hotel room, and that's about it. And then he told me as I'm waiting on my flight to New Orleans that I get in anywhere he does, including the green room, which was wild. I got to meet ton of people that I did not expect to meet, and I was surprised because the most famous people were the nicest.
Mm.
Like, um, I mean, the biggest so my favorite story from that is I got a chance to meet Dave Smith, who is one of the three of the Legion of Skanks, and he's a hilarious comic. He has a new special on YouTube that is really good, worth a watch if you like stand up, and that's why you're listening to this. And he everybody was coming up to him, and he was the first. I want to say he's the first comic I kind of talked to, and I went up and I was like, "Hey, man, don't want to bug you, but loved your special. Can I get a picture with you real quick?" He's like, "Yeah, absolutely." And took a picture, and I was like, "Anyway, man, well, I didn't want to bug you, but like and I was giving him like props on like certain things and talking about his special versus Lewis's versus like the other ones from Gas Digital and like talking about like kind of ranking them and stuff. I'm like, but no, I'll let you go. Cause like, he was like, a lot of people were trying to talk to him. He goes, no, dude, he goes, we're just chilling. He goes, come on, like have a seat. I had a drink with him and chilled and talked to him probably for 30 minutes. And like, because I'm so insecure, like 3 times in that 30 minutes, I was like, are you sure? I don't, and he goes, if I didn't want you to talk, if I didn't want you to talk to me, I would just say, nice meeting you or something. And I'd dip off. You're fine. Don't worry. And so he's like,
to
so
pull
tell
that
me,
parachute over.
yeah. He's like, so how long you been doing comedy? Cool. What's the Louisiana scene like? Oh, that's awesome. What got you into this? We were picking each other's brains and it was just a great conversation. Awesome dude. And like, a lot of the really famous comics were so nice. Joe DeRosa was really awesome. Doug Stanhope was pretty cool. I got a
Yeah.
chance to took a few pictures with him and everything, and he was just being himself. I mean, he's if you don't know who Doug Stanhope is, I feel like he's a very Hunter S. Thompson kind of style comic. You know what I mean? But he's amazing. But yeah, the whole festival was honestly great. Um, that's pretty much like in terms of my stories. That's just the thing I remember the most was just getting the chance to meet these people I never would think I'd be in the same room as.
It's a pretty unique opportunity for somebody 18 months or so in to be able to go and have that sort of green room experience with so many great comics all in a weekend or whatever.
Yeah.
So, yeah, man, we're all super jelly, but I think we're going to put in, I think we've all kind of decided. I don't know.
You definitely have the skills to put in. I'm putting in next year.
Well, and it's free. So like, why it's free to submit to Skankfest to submit a video. Yeah. So it's like, why not do it? You know what I mean? It doesn't make any sense to not do it. If the end result could be to get to go to this thing.
There's a lot of people. There's such a varying skill set. So with the festival, one of the sponsors was not the Spearmint Rhino. That's the famous strip club. It was a Peppermint Hippo. It's a knockoff strip club in Vegas, which is a great name. But they called it the Hippo Tank, and basically it was 14 hours straight of stand up. So one comic would go up and introduce the next comic, so on and so forth. I think it went from 10 a.m. to midnight. So you see such a varying level of skill sets on stage. Again, people that kind of go up there and you could tell they're newer, and then people so what happened? Tyler's first set on Friday. Every comic has 8-minute sets. So it was 16 minutes straight crickets, dude. I mean, I thought that crowd was going to walk out. There's probably 30-something, 40-something people there, and Tyler went up and jolted that place back to life, dude. He really delivered. He delivered all weekend. I mean, he's a great comic, great dude. Very, very talented individual, and hence why y'all had him on twice. I mean, he's established himself as a great comic. So
yeah, and a good dude.
Yeah,
Good
absolutely.
hang. He's pretty much the whole package.
Oh,
yeah. One of the things that Tyler has, since he got back from Skankfest, that he said over and over again, that I think was probably the biggest takeaway for him, I guess, was that he keeps saying over and over again, he's like, all the comedians treated both of y'all just like as colleagues. Yeah, peers.
Mhm.
It was like they didn't, like, if Big J Ogerson, like Tyler said, whether he's talking to you or he's talking to Bobby Kelly, he'll talk to both of you with the same type of respect. You know what I mean?
Yeah. We talked NFL for like 5-10 minutes, like nothing.
It's like, oh, you're a comedian. All right. You're one of us now.
So one thing I think separated, or not, it didn't separate me because I was in the majority, I guess in this case, of the plus ones and the guests that were back there. When I told comics that I was a comic, their demeanor changed to where they're like, oh, wait, hey, what's going on? And then they wanted to talk. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, it was more like, yeah, I'll tell you, yeah, whatever. And then they're like, oh, wait, you're a comic. Oh, okay. One piece of advice I got, because I did get a little inebriated that first Friday. I had a comic.
Well, let's just insert a comment there. The reason that he's laughing is because we gave him a hard time on the podcast for getting drunk and asking for advice. It was a really funny story.
That was pretty. Yeah, it was a little inside joke that Tyler picked up on. That I was not. It was not. The first two comics I talked to was supposed to be, it was a serious question, and then the rest I was just doing it as an inside joke to myself because I wanted to see how many people would struggle to then tell me the same thing over and over again. So basically, that's just the backstory of that. It's pretty, only child stuff, inside joke to myself. But so first night, I met Matt. I want to say it's Matt Eckerd. I want to say is his name. He's a Austin-based comic originally from California, and he says like, or I said, oh yeah, I've only been doing it 18 months, and he goes, hey, don't do that. He goes, just you're a comic. Don't say how long you've been doing comedy. That doesn't matter. Like, we're all in the same room together, So he's like, so when you introduce yourself, don't, and thank God, because he was like one of the first people I talked to. And this is before I got a chance to ask for any advice. And honestly, man, he's a great comic too, man. He's hilarious. But he gave me that piece of advice, and I took that to heart. And ever since I started doing that, just saying like, yeah, I'm a comic too. They're like, oh man, and then just we'd hit it off like nothing, like peers. So
we just feel very comfortable around fellow comics, and there is a shorthand, and there is just a natural understanding of what's your perspective on the world, where there's going to be some overlap between all of us. And so, but I didn't think they'd be so transparent about it. So that's really interesting that like as soon as they found out you were a comic, their whole demeanor changed. Like that's not something I would have expected.
It was wild. And it's also fun too, because it's like when I went to Little Rock to go watch the show, and they had the 3 Memphis comics, when they found out I was a comic, they're like, you should have let us know, and we would have like let you chill in the green room or something, or like chill with the other comics. So I'm like, oh well, comics just you just look at each other like peers, and it's a great community, and I'm very, very, very happy that I found it. So
hanging out with comics has slightly affected my social, like if I go places with my wife and just like regular people, where like every now and then we can be like having a good time, and we're talking and laughing, and somebody will say something, and I'll be like, oh, I'll say something out, and I'm like, we're gonna go in this direction with it, and everyone else is like, what the fuck just happened, or they don't even know it, they don't pick up on it, and they talk about something else. I'm like, if I would have been with comics,
that would have killed.
Now it would have killed, and then they would have started
the riff.
A riff would have started. No, and the riff didn't start.
Right here. You're waiting. Yeah, you're waiting.
Yeah,
for like
the riff didn't happen. Best case scenario is they don't even notice. They have no idea, or they're like, "What the fuck did you just say? Like, did you just say Hitler?" Like,
Jesus, man.
It's 11:30 in the morning. Our kids are running around.
Yeah. You're like, babe, we're at the grocery store. What are you doing right now? You're like, oh, I'm just trying to feel the room. Like I'm trying to read the room, man.
I've noticed my guard coming down at work. I work in a very stuffy corporate environment where nobody makes like jokes or anything. Everybody's like overtly serious. I've been there for 5 years, and I've noticed that my attitude has changed recently, and I've become much more relaxed and much more animated at work. And then like last week, they invited me. We have like a our office is set up sort of like a what do you call that? Like a
cubicle?
Yeah, but a bullpen. We have sort of a bullpen kind of environment, and is an open seating kind of thing. And all the managers are in a little clique in the far corner on the opposite end from our little sec. I'm over here, and everybody else is in the cool people's, whatever, is on the opposite corner. And last week they asked me to move to be right in the middle of all of them.
Nice.
And so I think that has something to do with it. I'm sure there's other factors.
A little bit.
Yeah.
You just have to like try not to drop the B word or something.
So many times.
Speaking of going into comedy and the social aspects of it, I've noticed something this past few months. I'm wondering if this has happened to y'all. Have you seen somebody that's not a comic do public speaking, and let's say whatever they're doing just isn't being being as receptive?
You'll think, they're bombing.
They're bombing. Yeah. You're like, oh man, I know you got this set, man. Dude, you're like, oh, you got.
We went to one of my wife's friends. This was like months ago, and she had a birthday party. So there was this bar, and they rented out the upstairs. So downstairs it's all the public. So there's like a private party upstairs, and they had a bar with a bartender, and there was a DJ.
Yeah.
And I remember I had messaged y'all in the group chat the next day, and I was like, man, I saw a DJ bomb last night.
No.
Because like a lot of people ended up going downstairs because there was another DJ downstairs, because it was like, and I was like right in front of him too.
Oh.
Like I could see them. Everyone was like, "This DJ sucks," and he's like, he was like right there, but he never got to, and he's like trying different things and like what he's doing. I don't even know how to explain it because he didn't know how to control the energy in the room by playing which songs in the correct order like a DJ knows how to do.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, it was heartbreaking. Like I really did feel for the guy.
Man. I feel like, yeah.
I was like, man, he's fucking bombing.
So I stood at my friend's wedding, and this was 4 months into me doing stand up, and it was just when I was kind of starting to get a little bit good, and so we had the rehearsal dinner, and everybody goes up and reads right off of the page, and I wasn't like best man or anything, but I was in the running for that, so I had something prepared in the back of my head, just facts, just honest what I felt about the couple because I've been friends with them for years. So everybody goes up and reads off of the paper and everything like that. And so it gets quiet. They go, "Does anybody else want to say anything?" And my friend's dad goes, "All right, Brennan, you got 15 minutes." And I was like, it's a serious event. And Cody and Reese are like, "Do you want to say something?" And I'm like, I'm not gonna be making jokes. I just want to say, and like, I feel like if I wouldn't have been doing stand up, I don't think I would have had the confidence to get up and say what I felt about them and give the speech. And I mean, I had them them in the room crying after. It was like beautiful.
Yeah, that's awesome too. That does feel good, like killing that comedy.
Well, it's like I didn't even have it written down. Like my presentation came across better than the people that they're reading off a paper. But no, I didn't mean to cut you off. But
no, but I did something like that, like probably a whole decade before I tried stand up. Because one of my friends got married, and there was like this group of us 3 friends that were real close. So when he got married, he kind of had me and the other guy both be best men. And so he went up first to give a speech. This is like the rehearsal supper,
Yeah.
And he gives a speech. He's got it written down. He's all dorky and shit, trying to give this real heartfelt speech. It bombs.
Oh no.
So then I go up next. I didn't even have any idea what I was going to say. I didn't write anything. I didn't think about it till that day. And I was thinking while he was talking about what to say. So I got up and I said something real, like he would write songs. And I was like, growing up, he wrote these songs about different things that would happen, so he kind of archived these memories with the songs he wrote. And I remember saying, "So let's raise our glasses." I said, "Well, now he met his wife and they're going to get married. So let's raise our glasses that his best work is yet to come." Mm-hmm. So I said something like that. And I saw the bride do like like about to cry. And then her dad was like, "Oh, that's so nice." And I was like, fucking right.
Yeah, you're right on this.
So then, I kept it short. I got off and I was like, dude, I fucking killed that shit.
Killed it.
It wasn't funny, but it got the desired what the other guy was trying to do.
You got the reaction.
Yeah.
You kind of like it's almost like he had a bad set and you're like, "Let's do a palate cleanser, guys." All right. So he just went up there and wrecked it.
Weddings, funerals. I've spoken at a few different sort of either funerals or like, I remember there was a thing where I was in high school and somebody died in a drunk driving accident. Jeez, and they asked people to get up and speak. And I was actually pretty good at getting up in those kind of situations and speaking from the heart without really like a script and giving these really moving speeches. And I kind of felt like I was more developed in that area when I started doing comedy. And so it was like, and I've talked about this a little bit before, but it's the idea of bringing baggage from some other part of your life into comedy, and it doesn't work because like you think I'll be good at this because I've done some public speaking and I've really thrived in some other kind of public speaking. It's like, oh, I got to do the exact opposite for comedy. So it was almost better to have a blank slate than to come in, having to unlearn something where you thought you were good in another area.
So speaking of public speaking, I actually wanted to bring this up if I got a chance to be on the podcast. So you brought up a few of my bits on this. So you brought up one about my therapist getting me into doing stand-up and I did that last night at Stone Drunk Sober. And That's not 100% false. Like it's not. It's I would say it's 50-50 because I do stretch the truth a little bit with that. But what happened was I went from so in high school I was doing a lot of public speaking with like I worked at Audubon Zoo in New Orleans,
Mhm.
so I was doing like animal presentations. Got helped out with like feeding shows. So I'd talk while the people were feeding, so kind of like co-hosting it, whatever. Anyway, I stopped doing that for a while, and I got really bad at public speaking. And so I was telling him like I want that confidence back, and he goes, "Oh, what you need to try is a Toasters Club." Oh, and he goes, "So I don't know if you guys are familiar with." Okay, so there's a few in New Orleans, one in Baton Rouge. I'm sure there's one in Lafayette. If you're listening to this and you're part of a Toasters Club, I am not shitting on Toasters Club. I think that's awesome. Keep
Yeah,
it
we
up.
have a big following.
Yeah, we have a big, it's a big part of our demographic, Brennan. We
Yeah.
need to, no. So what happens is basically guys, or people get together and they rehearse toasts. So my assumption is that is probably a short-term membership. If you don't have any practice with public speaking, and you have like a wedding or something coming up where you have to give a speech, you probably do that to get in and get those reps in. But when he was telling me that, I mean, I've been a fan of stand up as far as back as I can remember. I was watching Comedy Central half hours, stuff like that, and just Premium Blend, Comic View. So I was thinking, like, if I'm putting together like stuff to say in front of strangers, I'd rather it just be stand up. Honestly, like I feel like that would be, and I feel like that helps.
Yeah, that's I
Yeah.
mean, I hate to sound mean, but that sounds pretty pathetic though. Like to go somewhere and practice doing toast. That's
this
fucking wild.
response
Like,
was exactly what was in my head when I was
what
driving here. I
fucking-
knew that
like
Drew was gonna
that's
say
like
this.
the you can't have any less confidence than that.
I brought
To
this
be
up
like, I'm gonna
specifically.
meet with other people and practice toast like it's like a fucking AA meeting.
Most people run their toast by somebody else who's going to be in the room.
Mm.
You know
Yeah,
what I
you don't
mean?
go to meet other people who are a
Right.
bunch of other fucking pathetic losers.
Jesus.
I brought this up because I knew Drew was gonna say this. I threw Drew a line. I'm like, you got it, my man. I gave him a layup. I was like, come on, let's get this podcast going, baby. Let's go. I knew. I wanted to get your.
I'm glad you told me that because I'm gonna keep that for when my life is not going well and I'm real down on myself. And I'm gonna be like, well, at least I'm not going to fucking toast rehearsal tonight.
Oh my god, I love it so much. I just wanted to get your reaction
I'd almost
specifically.
rather go to an AA meeting and give the speech there. You
Which
know what I mean?
AA
Yeah.
meetings are way more funny. I don't know if you've ever been to AA meetings. My ex.
Yeah, I'm trying to steer. I'm worried things might get too real if I
No,
go.
no, it's
Yeah.
sitting. Nothing wrong with sitting. One of my exes, her dad is I mean, still sober. He's a recovering alcoholic, and I sat in on his 25-year AA meeting, and some of the stories were really sad, but then there are some guys that they are sober and their life is getting put back together, so they're happy. So now when they talk about it, they're like, "Oh man, this is so stupid. Check this out." And it's not like
Mhm.
it's not like, "Oh yeah, check this out. I got a drunk driving accident and murdered a family." It's never anything
Right.
like that. It's like it's just silly stuff, and just their sense of humor is great. They just because they know how to like take a bad situation and look at the positive about it, and I respect that a lot because I feel like you could see that a lot in stand up, like the trauma dumping thing you were bringing up earlier in terms of going on stage. Yeah, I just feel like if you ever want like something to actually help you be positive about stuff, AA meetings is actually one of those things where if you just wanted to sit in, they don't make you talk if you don't want to, and it's a
Well, I can tell you one thing. Those people, especially if it's someone that came in their first meeting because they just hit rock bottom, don't tell them that there's such a thing as clubs where people get together to rehearse toast because they probably be like, "Oh, well, I think I'm fine," and they'll go back to drinking. They'll be like, "Oh, well,
So do you get to
Things
hold
are
a glass
not-
of wine while you give
Yeah.
this speech?
It's like he knocked out an entire
do they
bottle
teach you
before
the
he
right?
started.
They teach you the right way to do it with the tap it with the butter knife. Yeah,
Oh my god! This is so
yeah.
I was so happy to bring that up in front of Drew. I wanted to see what he had to say.
Well, I'm also glad you brought it up because I kind of wanted to ask you about that and sort of set the record straight because I think it's actually come up a couple of times sort of out of context on the podcast without referring to you specifically or that exact scenario. But the concept of somebody who either has like mental health issues or has problems with stage fright or anything where they're like, I should go do stand up maybe as an opportunity to sort of like exposure therapy or something along those lines. And I think what we've come to every time it's come up is how terrible of an idea it actually is to take someone who's in
I think if you like comedy or you're funny, then maybe it's not a bad idea. But but somebody just to be like, oh, just to go face your fears and they have no interest in it. No, I think that could take someone that's maybe not someone who's kind of teetering.
Exactly.
It could push them over to the wrong side.
Oh, yeah.
So I have mixed feelings about it. Ultimately, I do agree. I think in terms of exposure therapy, I think exposure therapy can work in small doses.
Oh, sure.
I think stand-up as exposure therapy is not a good idea because what's going to happen is, Louis J. Gomez quote, if you do stand-up, no offense, I'm sorry, it's all of us, you're going to suck for the first 10 years. Like, that's just no matter who you are.
Yeah.
Comedy will make you feel on top of the world one night. The next night you'll feel rock bottom.
Extreme lows.
We've all been there. We've all gotten off of stage and done a set and wanted to jump into traffic. I mean, it is. And when I first started, I wasn't doing well. And my parents were like, why are you putting yourself through this? And at the time, I was not in a good spot in life. I was in between jobs and I was like, I just got out of a breakup and I was going through this like stuff with my family and just I had a lot going on. And like, I was like going through so much. And they're like, why are you torturing yourself right now? And I'm like, because I love stand-up. Like I fell in love with it. I started out at Worst Beer Garden and I never looked back. And I think in terms of doing it as exposure therapy, if you're okay with having a bad set, if you're okay with bombing and having a bomb being a constant possibility throughout your entire time, however long you've been doing stand-up, Kyle Kinane's been doing stand-up probably 20-something years, probably more. I talked to him and I said, I'm worried about bombing. And he goes, don't. And I goes, when was the last time you bombed? And he goes, honestly, 2 months ago, 2 blocks from my house. I'm like, what? And he goes, yeah.
He's like runs into these people at the supermarket.
Yeah.
And shit.
Yeah. He's like, yeah, basically in my neighborhood almost. Like,
yeah, they
just
bring
like,
their dogs to the same vet.
Yeah, dude, yeah. No, man, I just so I don't recommend that in terms of exposure therapy. I did stand up because, like I said, I've always loved it. As far back as I can remember, I watched it and been a fan of it. But if you have any prior experience in public speaking, you'll do better. You might go up. It really kind of falls. There's so many factors. So the thing with the thing I love about comedy is there's so many factors that go into when you're on stage. Like there are some people that don't have to try that are just so funny out of the gate. So many like new people, like dude, Don, like he just started and he is a murderer, dude. And that's not typical.
No,
like,
it's not. Yeah,
but and I'm sure,
and
I don't know.
especially for his age too, because
Right,
he's so
yeah.
fucking old. You would think he'd be more out of touch, you know.
You think he'd be way more problematic,
But he's or just like you've been around old people when they say things they think are funny, you know. It's like,
God.
yeah, that was
Dude.
funny maybe in the 70s or 80s, but that's not funny. You
You're
know what I mean?
public
But
and you're like, whoa.
somehow Don has his finger pretty good on the pulse of what people think are funny, you know?
I mean, there's just so many. The main reason I don't think you should do stand up as exposure therapy though is because I think there's just too many factors that go into it. Do stand up if you want to do stand up. And you know what? I always recommend people to try it once. You can try it once. Most open mics are free. Do it once. If it goes bad, you hate it. Guess what? You're never gonna see these people again.
Right.
So, I mean, that's my take on it. I do think exposure therapy in small doses, but in terms of getting over your fear of public speaking, I mean, I wouldn't recommend Toasters Club. I'd recommend stand up over that. But like, I don't know. In terms of public speaking, just there are a lot of things you can do that are not stand up to get over your fear of public speaking. Because one problem I had for a while, and I still have it, is like I talk fast. Like my dad's side of the family talks ridiculously fast. So I went and I didn't realize how many exercises there were to like make yourself slow down. And a lot of it's super simple, like reading a book to yourself. It's going to be very weird at first, but you figure out how to like slow yourself down. So yeah, I mean, if there's that many different exercises for talking slower, I'm sure even more for getting over fear of public speaking. That's what top fear for amongst people. Some death and public speaking.
Yeah,
or something?
Seinfeld had a joke about it.
Yeah. So
No, I don't know if because I kind of wanted to bring this up earlier. I don't know if this is true, but I heard a theory that seemed pretty scientific and legit when I heard it, that the reason that so many people fear public speaking is because back in our tribal ancestry days, the only time that you ever had to speak in front of your tribe is when you were basically being accused of some sort of horrendous crime and you were potentially going to be exorcised from the group. And exile meant death back in that time. If you didn't have your tribe with you, you were almost certainly going to die on your own. And so that was the reason that we all kind of developed this feeling of like, we shouldn't be speaking in front of everybody right now.
Right. I mean, I could see that. I mean, it makes the checks out. I actually looked it up when I was listening to y'all's podcast with Isaiah because I was kind of curious. I was like, yeah, why do people have a fear of public speaking? And I didn't come across that checks out. But what I saw was basically base level. It's just like people are worried about being embarrassed slash rejected. So if you
Mhm.
pitch an idea, like, and when not, let's talk not even stand up. How many times have you been in a conversation, you've pitched an idea to somebody and they're like, "That's dumb, we're not doing that," and you're
Oh,
like,
yeah.
"Oh," like you kind of get like a little bit hurt.
Yeah,
You're
you
like, "All
bomb
right,
all the
Yeah.
time in front of people in a
Yeah, dude.
Or the
non-comedy
idea of like, oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean
no,
to
just
cut
in
you
a
off.
non-comedy context.
yeah,
Like or when you're a young man, you remember like how terrifying it would be like to talk to if you liked a girl, like to ask a girl out. And like now, to me, that seems so silly to be
yeah,
so worried. You know what I mean?
For
Like
sure.
when I was before I met my wife, when I was single and like in my 30s, that didn't scare me at all.
no,
It was like if you like a girl and you talk to her, you just tell her like, "Hey, would you want to do?" And they sometimes they say no, and you're just like, "All right, cool," and you get the fuck on with it. You know, it's not that.
We
When it's so scary when you're young, that
Oh
rejection.
yeah. I don't think I don't even really think age necessarily. Age can only go so far in terms of helping you where you don't care. So everybody goes through that experience as they get to be our age and older where you're like, oh, I don't really give a shit as much anymore as I
right.
used to. But that only goes so far. And when it comes to bombing, when you're in a business meeting or any kind of situation like that, what I've seen is when you make it a part of your life to make yourself do something that's hard on a regular basis, if it's particularly hard, it makes the day-to-day things that most people struggle with seem like not, like Drew was saying, not that big of a deal. Like I wake up in the morning and I every day, every single day, it's weightlifting and or some pretty intense cardio.
Yeah.
And dude, it makes the rest of the day feel like, man, I already basically tortured myself this morning. The rest of my days is going to be a lot more manageable now.
So I mean, that's something that, yeah, if you put yourself in a high pressure environment, you're gonna be better. Like so, with me being in pharmacy, like I've been doing it. I made 10 years back in July of me working in pharmacy. And so to put in perspective, most retail stores will do like 450 to like 700 scripts a day. I was starting out at like a place that did like 750. Then I went to a place in Metairie for 5 years. It did like around 1,000 a day.
Wow.
And then I went back to the busiest Walgreens in Baton Rouge for a while, and that was like 800 to 1,000 a day. And now that I've like went to a HIV clinic that is a like much less volume in terms of, I'm also doing a slightly different job. It's still much less volume. It's just like it makes you better. You can handle pressure better. It just makes that skill set better. So like yeah, the more pressure you put on yourself before, it makes you just a better overall, better makes you better overall at whatever you're trying to do. So
Yeah. And I think as far like there's like a thing with stand up and a lot of these other things. I think it applies to all these things, or even like this getting rejected by a girl too. Is like you have the um the survival on the other end. You know what I mean? Like the reason to
Oh,
me,
yeah.
it's like getting rejected by a girl is not that big a deal because I could think of every girl, even before I met my wife when I was single. I think of every girl that rejected me when I was younger, and it has no It's like, yeah, who cares?
Right.
Like you see, it doesn't matter. Same thing like Joshua Jordan. That's one of the things he told me when I first started stand up, and I was telling about like how terrified I was to do it the first time. And he's like, yeah, but then you do it that first time, and even if it goes terrible, like the first thing you think is like, "Well, I survived. Like
Yeah.
you did it. You're here.
It's over.
Like it's over."
I was
Yeah.
when I was doing the
Uh,
boombox show, the kid that went up first had like 2 minutes or something, and he was worrying himself to death. And
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
like, dude, look at me, breathe. And he goes, what if I bomb? I go, if you bomb, it's over.
Everyone's expecting you to anyway, probably.
He didn't.
It was like his first time?
Yeah, he did fine. He got a pop. He got one pop in 2 minutes, which is fine. For that level, he's only...
Yeah, the expectations are very low.
Yeah, like nobody's gonna... I go, even if it goes great, it's over. If it goes bad, it's over. You're gonna look back on having like 5 or 10 minutes, and you get off and you're like, that was 5 or 10... It felt like 5 seconds, you know? Like, it's just over, you know? You don't have anything... Yeah, you're right. You just have nothing else to worry about, so...
And I've had a friend who had talked about doing stand-up, and he still never has. And one of the things, and he's like, I don't want to be... I'm worried about like bombing or being embarrassed in front of the other comedians. And I was like, well, if you're afraid of that, then don't do comedy.
Definitely
because
don't.
That's a part of it. You're going to have to bomb. But don't worry about the other comedians or the last people you need to worry about. Because comedians are not going to judge you for bombing or having a bad set. Right. We all bomb and have bad sets. Everybody. No one's gonna judge you for it.
I think the only thing that I mean, there's lots of, so we talk so much about the social aspects of like kind of behind the scenes off stage stuff that has to do with the comedy. But when it comes to being judged by your fellow comedians, I think the only thing that I've seen people really judge other comics for is doing the same things over and over and over again and not learning.
Yeah. Well, being lazy, I guess, to put it in a nutshell, really. Yeah. Or either lazy or just like
clueless.
You just like some people just don't get it. There's some people that are so like they're not on the same fucking temperature or whatever. I don't even know how to explain it. Like
wavelength.
They're not on the wave. I've done it where we did a Jacob's show in Lake Charles one time, and I was on panel, and they have this one guy, and I'm just trying. He's like teeing me up for something, and I would try it, and he'd be like, "Huh, what? I don't know."
Yeah,
and all this till fine. At one point, I threw the microphone down on the table. I'm like, "Whatever, dude."
You're like,
I'm trying. I'm trying.
I'm
trying everything I can to pull something funny out of you.
Will you just me once?
It's not fucking there. Yeah, exactly. Like, dude, can you go with a fucking bit for one? Like, are you a comedian or not?
The thing about this, like, and I feel like this is just entertainment in general. One thing that I'm very happy I was told by Tyler was he goes, like, I think he goes, the biggest thing you have two biggest things you have going for you is, one, you care about this a lot, and two, you're self-aware. And he goes, that second thing is massive because not a lot of people are. And like the number of people that I've been on a mic with or on a showcase with that mid to not a good set, and they get off and they're like, psh, just murdered. I mean, they weren't ready. And I'm like, cool. Yeah, you know, I'm like, I don't even say, yeah, I'm not going to lie to their face. I'm just like, okay. And I just go up and do my thing. But it's just like, some people will get crickets and they'll be like, psh, I'm putting that on my Insta. I killed it, you know?
Or they think of any noise counts.
Dude.
Right. A lot of them do that. They'll get a lot of applauses and stuff because they just call out shit that people like.
I didn't.
And then at the end, they're like, yeah, that was good. And it's like, I didn't hear any laughs, dude.
I don't heckle comics. I had this one, I guess, I don't know if this was a heckle, but like
I'll heckle Joshua Jordan sometimes.
Oh, that's for me. Josh is he's an awesome comic. I love y'all's back and forth. You're back and forth with Josh, and you're back and forth with John are my two favorite things in the comedy scene right now, honestly. Like, it's so entertaining. When y'all were doing the promo videos for the Lake Charles competition, I was tuning in like a regular fan. I was like, oh guys, my program's on. You know, I was like, you know. But no, I was at this mic in New Orleans, and this comic, the crowd was kind of dead. And the comic went up and was doing the thing that I used to do, and Tyler broke me of this habit, which is asking questions. I was surprised at how many people in Vegas did this too, and ask like, "Oh, so nobody here likes music, you know, like who here likes music or whatever." But he was like not getting anything, and he goes, "Anybody here keep up with the news?" And no one made any noise, so I was just like, "Woo!" And he goes, "You wooing? I don't believe you." And I just go, "Well, I was making some noise for you." And I was just like, I don't know what else I can do. You know, like I'm just like, it's no one's reacting. Like, so I was like, let me just
don't turn it over to us and then get upset with our
I'm giving you feedback.
This is your job.
You could have said anything at that point. You'd be like, anybody here like throwing puppies off bridges? I'd be like, woo, you know, like whatever. You know, you could have said anything, you know?
Yeah, I think asking questions, like if you think about the way that an attorney would cross-examine somebody or depose somebody, you never ask a question that you don't basically already know the answer to. You don't really surrender that control. I feel like the same thing happens in comedy. You really, to a great extent, unless you're just an excellent improviser and you already have so many things in your pocket waiting, that no matter how they react, you're ready. You really shouldn't do that. And also just too much exposition in jokes in general.
I think that's something I think that's something I got to work on a lot. I think I'm pretty long-winded with a lot of my material, and I think there's a lot of exposition I can cut out to just get to the point of the joke. But no, I mean, yeah, I mean, asking the question, as you mentioned, like you never want to ask a question that, not even just that, but it's like if you ask a question like, anybody here like music? Best case scenario, somebody would be like, yes, and that's it. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
what else could you possibly get from that? You know, you're not going to make the crowd cheer for music. Like
Yeah.
saying like, yeah, man, this guy's bringing up something we all listen to.
And it is a thing that sometimes we all do it too.
Oh, yeah.
It's
Oh,
like
yeah.
you do it without even realizing it. Yeah.
And it happens when you're trying out bits.
I'm always try to not do it unless there's a purpose for it.
I did it last night at Stone Drunk Sober, and I realized I did it. I meant to just jump into my Halloween joke, and I just realized right after I asked the question in the back of my head, I'm on stage. I'm like, crap, I shouldn't have asked the question. Why did I ask it? You know, but it's all good. But yeah.
Well, I wanted to sort of poke around in your personal life a little bit.
Yeah, that's what by all means.
We get a lot of anecdotal information, but
Right.
just through stories and jokes and stuff. But I don't really have much of a narrative of your personal life in general. So, did you say you were born and raised in New Orleans?
Born and raised in New Orleans, technically Metairie, if anybody here is listening and they're like, he's not from New Orleans. But yeah, I'm right outside New Orleans, so from New Orleans. Went to LSU for 4 years, went to Xavier for pharmacy school, that's in New Orleans. Went back to Baton Rouge for work. I've been there for the past 2.5 years now. And gonna be moving, yeah. But I mean, in terms of my personal life, yeah, man, I'm ask away, you know. I don't.
Did you go to private school, a Catholic school?
Yeah, so Catholic school, really my whole life. I mean, yeah, elementary, high school, college. Oh, not LSU was public, but then Xavier's a private school. So most of my education.
When did you decide you wanted to go into pharmacy?
So, I originally, as I mentioned, I worked at Audubon Zoo in New Orleans for 8th grade through 12th grade, and I wanted to go pre-vet, and it was fine. I just didn't feel like it was the right fit for me, and I knew I wanted to do something in like medicine. I didn't want to be a doctor because it requires straight A's, and I'm just not a straight A student. I made straight A's twice
And you
in
have
college.
to touch people.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, that's true too. I mean, even it's just a weird. It's not like nothing weird about it. It's just like the thought of me doing that was weird to me. Like I just didn't see myself being in that. So basically, I knew I wanted to do something medically, so I took every career aptitude test that LSU had to offer. Tested the highest percentage in veterinary, and then right under that was pharmacy, and then medical, or I mean, and like medicine, like regular MD stuff, you know, and I gave pharmacy a shot. I'm actually happy I did too because, like, a lot of people in my family are in the medical field, and I have a couple doctors. I didn't, and I do have a cousin that is a pharmacist, but I didn't want to go into a field that a couple other people already did because I didn't want to. I wanted to do my own thing. I didn't want to be like, oh, you're just like Hector, you know, or something like that, and like you know, just do something like that. So yeah, so I mean that's kind of what got me into it. I started.
What an interesting name to use. I'm sorry to cut you off, but I had
That
to
is
comment
what-
on it.
Yeah,
Of
it's
Hector.
too. Yeah.
No, yeah, Hector Fernandez. My mom's side of the family is Spanish, so from Puerto Rico, and the other half's from right outside Madrid. But yeah, so never man, that was a weird way to drop on y'all. I did notice the reaction when I said that. But anyway.
Yeah, it's like the whitest dude we've ever had on the podcast. And he's like, yeah, his mom, Hector.
Yeah, dude.
You and Trevor Chapman.
Yeah, dude. But man, Josh Jordan's listening to this right now. He's like, hell yeah, I'm not the whitest dude you guys have had on. This is great, man. I love this. So anyway, no, I just wanted to do my own thing. And so I switched my major over to pharmacy, and then switched it back to just biology. But he wanted my counselor, my advisor wanted me to apply to pharmacy school like the next semester.
Mhm.
And like it's a big financial uh like step to take.
Yeah.
And so if you're ever going to professional school, do research because it's a lot. But I was like, let me just work for a year. If I love it, I'll do it. And I within the first couple months, just like comedy, I just fell in love with it. Never looked back.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been saying that they push college so hard on me growing up and
Mhm.
back in my I don't know what it's like now, but like when I was a kid, they would tell you like, oh, even if the job you go for, you don't need college, you still go for something to back off. That's the dumbest thing
Yeah.
to
Mhm.
spend that much money. I wish they would have told kid because this was kind of how my dad was. My dad was like, before you go to college for something, go work at the place.
Yeah.
Go do that for like you said, like a year.
Yeah.
Or
Give yourself a year.
if you can stand it for a year. If you can't
6 months.
stand if you can't stand it for a year, then don't fucking go to college for it. If you
No.
can't do it for a year, you can't do it for your life.
Absolutely.
You know, before we're gonna spend these thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars on college, go have some jobs for when I got out of high school, my dad told me, he said, because I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And he told me, he said, if 5 years from now, if you want to go to college, I'll pay.
Yeah.
Just like I'll pay now. Because he talked me out. He was telling me, don't go to college right now.
Well, going to college, so basically like going to college for a job and getting a degree in a job and start like without even starting out the job, it's like the nearest thing I can think of is like those couples that move in after they get married
Mhm.
or something like that where they're like, oh yeah, we've never lived together,
Right.
and then we get married and then move. Did that? Okay, am I hitting
No,
anybody in there?
yeah.
Okay, I'm making sure. I was like, you kind of just gave me a weird nod. I'm like, oh crap. But no, because you need to know how the person is. You need to know the little ticks about the little things they do before you move in with them permanently. That's like a big step. It's kind of like, but yeah, I mean, I don't think in terms of college, there's a lot of fields that I think going to college for that is a great thing to go into. So I'm not really there's never really like it's a huge debate on whether or not college is worth it, and it really just depends on what you want to do.
Yeah, it's not a yes or no
It's
type
not an
thing. I
easy
mean,
question to answer.
it depends on the person and the situation and all that.
Right.
You know?
A lot of times you don't really know until you get more of a feel like
Yeah.
long term where your life is headed.
It's
post
not like
college
people
anyway.
think with so many things, like it's not a binary thing. It's not
Right.
like you're either for college or against college,
Right,
It's,
right.
Yeah. So, if you don't mind me asking, just this personal curiosity, because my daughter is dead set on being a vet.
Okay.
And so I was curious if you had a lot of aptitude for that. Clearly something, somebody was advising you to go to pharmacy school at your college, but
Yeah, I mean,
as far as any other reasons, what steered you away from the vet school thing?
I just didn't feel like it was the right fit.
Mhm.
And if I'm being 100% honest, it, the job market is tough.
Mhm.
It is the tough. It's a harder program to get into the med school, and the job market is very minimal. So what I wanted to do was there's 3 branches of vet. So there's domestic, which is your dogs and cats, big animal, cows and horses, stuff like that, and then there's exotic, which would be like
parrots and shit.
yeah. Well, I think that
Well,
might.
you worked at a
No, actually,
zoo.
that would fall under. Weirdly enough, rabbits fall under exotic. I did not know that
Oh,
until like
that's
this
interesting.
past year. But
Well, you worked at the zoo for like 5 years.
5
Is
years,
that right?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I'm just curious how you got away. So it was kind of a practical
it
decision.
was just like, yeah, I got in there and it was just it just didn't feel like the right fit, and I was looking at the long term of things, and for what I wanted to do, there's probably like by the time I graduated and went through the same amount of debt as I do in pharmacy school, there was 30 jobs in the nation I could probably get, and a lot of them were probably already taken. You know what I
Mhm.
mean?
Yeah.
By somebody that just knew the people that were hiring and stuff like that. The Audubon was not going to be hiring another vet because they just had their 2, and they were great vets, but they're not going to be looking for anybody else. And it's a harder program to get into, and the job market, the rewards aren't as
So you
Yeah.
got to
good.
really want that.
You gotta want it. And I mean, hey, if she wants to do it, there's nothing wrong with doing it. I think it's a good field. I just
Yeah.
think it's a if you go into like I'm sure if you go into the other 2 branches, you find jobs easier. But in terms of like putting in the work and then going into the debt, reaping the rewards isn't as high.
I have a
Mhm.
cousin whose wife is a vet, and it's so hard to get into veterinary school. She had to go to veterinary school in Grenada.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah, because it was too. And I think it had something to do with LSU.
Mhm.
But she couldn't go to LSU like in
Yeah.
Baton Rouge or New Orleans. I think most medical school is in veterinary school for LSU is in New Orleans, I
Mhm.
believe. But she had to go to fucking Grenada. Like such a backwards ass. Like they put you in jail if you're gay over there, dude.
Dude,
Wow.
what?
Yeah, my cousin went to visit and he came back and he's like, dude, it was crazy.
He's like, I got away. They didn't know. Anyway,
Yeah,
he's
yeah.
like, he's like, kind of like feel like a fugitive out there.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah,
I
I
have a
can't
friend.
go there for sure.
Oh yeah, yeah.
No,
They'll
man.
never believe you.
I have a friend of mine who he got into med school, but he got into med school in like the Cayman Islands.
Mhm.
Like it's just one of those things where, hey, I mean, it's med school, but
Yeah,
like,
people do kind of turn their. That's kind of like a joke, right? Like that's like a recurring joke I've heard. Is that if you have to go
Yeah.
somewhere like that to get through medical school, you're probably not a very good student or
I mean,
whatever.
and it could be
Well, it
circumstantial,
has
but for the
nothing.
most part,
It's
probably.
political. That's
Yeah.
what I was told because I was like, how? Because it's like she had made like she could have been a doctor if she wanted. Her grades were so good, but it's like there's not enough spots for everyone.
Right.
So
And they have to,
and
yeah.
everyone is 4.0 or whatever. You know what I mean? They all
yeah.
equally as smart. Not all these being smart and being a hard worker isn't enough. So
Mhm.
it does come to a lot of like, well, who are your parents?
Right.
Oh God. Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think, yeah, I mean, a lot of it's political. I got like when I was applying for Xavier, like I mean, it was very, very, very like strict application process. It's a lot, I mean, and there's a lot of people that didn't get accepted that I think should have. It's just all, yeah, at the end of the day, it depends on what the program wants and needs or what they feel like they need. So I mean, I can't fault them for it.
Yeah,
They run their own stuff, so.
for sure. Hmm. Okay. So pharmacy is taking you to Arkansas. Is this like, do you see this being like an indefinite change, or is this like I got a 5-year plan, I'm going to make a stepping stone from here to there? Like do you have any thoughts along those lines?
So when I was in pharmacy school, I was always the person that was like, I'll chase the money. I'll go to like Nebraska and like
Right.
work or whatever, just me and my dog, that's all I'm gonna need, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
And man, this is like it's just a young guy thing to say.
sure.
But it's no, but I've been wanting to get out of Louisiana just for a little bit. So right now the goal is like, yeah, probably like a 5-year plan and then maybe come back to Louisiana. But I have nothing against Louisiana. I just wanted a different perspective because I feel like that my friends that have had that opportunity come back just with like a better outlook on most things. Just getting a different perspective. When you're younger, if you don't have a family, you can always move back home.
Mhm.
I mean, your family's not going anywhere. I mean, they'll support you and all that stuff. So yeah, I've been breaking the news to a lot of people this past week because I just got extended the offer, and I'm looking forward to it. And but it's just been bittersweet because I'm gonna obviously miss a lot. I don't know anybody out there, so
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, I guess I am a little curious. Did you at any point in this sort of decision making process ever look into something that would have taken you closer to, like, say, in Austin, Texas?
yeah. So Texas was my other state I was looking. I was looking at Arkansas, Texas, and Georgia because a lot of my family is out in Georgia, and Texas, I just feel like has been getting kind of like saturated in terms of
Mhm.
the job market there. And I haven't looked at the numbers, you know, that recently, but it's always been like a pretty booming industry out there. And the good and the bad is yeah, it's booming industry, but out there, but like because they're making a lot of like, they're doing like monoclonal antibodies, which is like a new wave of medicine that like everybody's probably gonna be taking in the next 5 years. And they're doing all like this new medicine stuff and they have a lot of great health clinics and health systems out there that work with pharmacists, but the job market there is getting kind of saturated.
Yeah.
With Georgia, I love it, but I feel like the cost of living is too high. And
Hmm.
then I found Arkansas and I'm like, it was beautiful. I mean, I fell in love with it and everything out there, the way things are falling into place, just I was like, all right, got my license out there and got extended the offer a couple weeks later and it was so that's the
Yeah.
move right now. So
Yeah, I don't think either one of us have any immediate plans to go anywhere, but we're all kind of asking those kinds of questions. Like if we did, Jason probably more than anybody talks about it a lot. Like if I were going to go somewhere, where would I go?
yeah,
And so we're all kind of thinking along those lines. But I would just love to see the Lafayette scene really just continue to grow and thrive. You know, we can just stay here and do something big.
I mean, I think what y'all are already doing is pretty big. I mean, with this podcast, like I said, I've listened to every episode since y'all started, and just what y'all have been able to do, like with this short amount of time and how big it's gotten. I mean, we got cameras now. You know what I mean? Like, and we got, and like, there's a whole production now, and you have a following, and I remember me and you were hanging out, or the three of us were hanging out after the Louis J. Gomez show, and y'all had people coming up to you and be like, "Oh my God, like Drew, Michael," you know, they're like, "Dude, I
Right.
love y'all's like, you know, like
Yeah.
treating you like you just went up and did a set." You know what I mean? They were
Right.
just
It
like
was
they're
cool.
huge
Yeah.
fans, and you're like, "Sorry about that." I'm like, "No, that's awesome, dude. Like, don't apologize for having fans, man. Like, you're doing your thing, dude." But I think, yeah, I'm excited because I mean, also like y'all are good comics. One of the reasons that I got into comedy is because I mean, I got better, but I like seeing people progress too.
So, as you know, we like to wrap up every episode with this hypothetical question for the guest that hopefully will illuminate what in your life rivals stand up in things like importance and meaning. And, you know, I've thought about what I might trade in my life to get where I want to be as a comic. And it occurred to me that I would give up sex for comedy. Like, I would never have sex with another person ever again if in exchange for that, all of my wildest comedy dreams would come true exactly the way that I want them to. So the question is, if you had to make a deal with the devil to give up something very costly so that all your comedy dreams would come true exactly the way that you wanted them to, what might that be?
So I'm a very like routine based person. So it would be one of the two things out of my routine, like my weekly thing. One thing that I do every day. So like usually it's like so I'll like lift weights and I'll for cardio I'll usually do basketball.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like I would give up one of those two things. Um when y'all had Garrett Abear on, he hit like the nail on the head of what I wanted to say is that it's just satisfying to like see the end product of what you do after you put the work in. So I don't really want to be in a position to like just snap my fingers and have the end goal. I want to have it after I've put in the work for it.
Yeah.
So I think I mean yeah, if you don't it's like when you put work into anything, that end result's just all the sweeter for doing that, you know?
See, now in the past, if somebody would have said something along the lines of like working out, I would have been like, bullshit. You know, I would have, because like I didn't
You're like, I'm
have
looking at you, Brennan. You're not working out that much,
Oh,
man.
no, more along the lines of like, even if you were fit like Garrett, I still would have been like, you know, but I've had an experience recently over the last, say, 60 days of seeing what it's like. And I don't know, I'm not going to put you on blast, but I've some of the conversations that we've had, I've gotten the impression there's some kindred spirits among us in terms of like mental health stuff and sort of chasing away some of those darker thoughts and stuff. Yeah. And I never would have said this in the past, but having experienced it firsthand, giving up, if you work out on a regular basis, you know the benefits that brings in terms of keeping you in a much better headspace. And so the idea that you would jeopardize that for your comedic dreams to come true is actually a much weightier thing than I think the casual listener even realizes.
So I don't want to give up both things. I want to have at least one of those two that I mentioned. Because even if it was just cardio, if it was just basketball, you know, like, you know, it would still stimulate what you're talking about in terms of keeping your mental health kind of together and having that routine. And having that physical activity, but I do agree with you. Yeah, that is a very weighty thing to give up, because it could hamper, you know, your comedy. Like you can make it, and then you could just lose your mind. Like, you know?
Suffering and pain and a down to earth perspective are all useful until you pour too much sugar into the mixture, and now or too much. Let's just say, what's something bitter?
Sour.
Something if you put too much of any good thing into the recipe, it can tilt the whole thing in the wrong.
That's a great one. Yeah.
I love garlic, but garlic is good when it's subtle.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, when it's overpowering, it's a problem. And I think that
we should do a cooking podcast too.
Dude, I would be so down. So the thing is, you personally, I mean, this dude has had to listen to me and be like, dude, I'm going to go home and kill myself tonight. And I'm not joking.
I know you've told me to. That's fine.
Yeah.
I mean,
and it's not a joke. You know,
Oh, Jesus.
Some of the people have seen me
Yeah.
in my absolute darkest moments. And I've been so close to the bad place. And the comedy, actually, as bad as things were, it was the comedy that was like bombing and just constantly. Because you mentioned being self-aware.
Yeah.
Have you found that being self-aware actually is a double-edged sword,
Yeah.
self-awareness?
Yeah.
Because you know when you're doing great, you know what you need to improve when something's wrong, but you also know when you're in a rut.
Yeah.
And you have no reason to believe you're ever going to come
Yeah.
out of it.
100%. There's 100. Like I've had a ton of times where I've been on stage and I'm like, I don't know if I can salvage this. You know, I know how bad this is going. I know I'm not killing right now. I know this is. They're looking at me like, when is this dude getting off stage? Like, I mean, and then that gets in your head, and like kind of like the thing I mentioned earlier, where I'm like, I did it earlier, where I was like, you know, oh, I asked the question, shoot, I shouldn't have done that, and then I did a little pause in my set when I was thinking that, you know, just like yeah, it could get in your head. I think the main thing is, uh so with me, one thing I've had to kind of come to terms with and learn how to do is focus on the positive. And I know that's extremely generic
Mhm.
advice, and some people probably rolling their eyes to that, but it's like you can have a day go by, and let's say you have like, you know, somebody cuts you off and you're pissed off, and like you just focus on something like that for the rest of the day instead of like, oh man, but I went to work and I did my job great, and my boss gave me a
I'm
compliment.
bad about that. I'll do
Yeah.
that.
Like, and you're like, instead, you're like, no, you're just worried about that dude that cut you off on 65 or whatever, you know, and you're just
Mhm.
like, damn, like, you know, and it's like, there's no point in, it's not productive to you at all. So just sometimes bad stuff will happen, but you just got to focus on the positive and, quit. Don't like disqualify the positive, because that's another thing too. I used to do a lot. Like my friends and, you know, my girlfriend or whatever, or my parents would be like, yeah, but this happened. And I'm like, nah, like, you know, you kind of just like, kind of like
Absolutely.
brush it
Mhm.
off. You're like,
Mhm.
yeah, but this, you
Yeah, you
know,
heavily weight the emphasis on the thing that you don't like. It's a
Yeah.
negativity bias. And the thing is, obsessive tendencies and depressive tendencies they have a lot of overlap, because a core part of depression is ruminating on negative thoughts. And so that's just like being OCD. I'm a little both. And I think I've gotten the impression that you've said some things about, you know, having some obsessive tendencies, maybe. Maybe not. Maybe I'm on the,
I'm not, I wouldn't say OCD or anything like that, but I do fixate on something sometimes. Yeah.
yeah.
I've noticed. I've seen you do this before. I hope I'm not getting too
No, go for it,
too
dude.
real here.
We can cut it.
But there have been times you've been doing a set, and and at a certain in the beginning, kind of close to the beginning of the set, you'll either drop a tag or a punchline that'll kind of bomb, or you might just not say something the way that you were supposed to say it. And I can see that you were in your head about that for the rest of the set, and then the rest of the set doesn't go well.
Mm-hmm.
Where if you would have just been like, in the moment, if you'd have just been like, fuck, oh, whatever, keep going, and had just forgot about it and kept on
Mhm.
going, the set probably would have went completely the other way. Which
Yeah.
is kind of like, you know, like
I'm
what he
only
was
laughing.
saying, though.
I'm only laughing because
is
Drew
your
said this
focus-
to me.
Yeah, but you'll focus on like he's saying, like where you'll have one, you know, the guy cut you off in traffic. It's this one bad thing that happened all day, and you'll focus on that, even though most of the day
was
overall it was a great day. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
But I don't know. I think you've gotten better though about, like, you seem to be having more fun
Right.
when
You
you
definitely
get
do.
up. Like, it seems like you've been concentrating more on just enjoying doing stand up, and then it's kind of seems like everything else kind of follows that. You know, everything else gets better and easier. You know.
And
100%.
you had said on the last episode when we were talking about the Supermac thing, and I think we pretty much covered most of it, but I think it's really relevant to a lot of what we've been talking about here, is that when your mindset is such a big part of how you come across to other people. So when you would go into a situation and be like, I'm just going to go hit on this girl for the fun of it, and I don't have anything invested on what happens.
Oh, that's my friend that does that. I don't
Oh
do
yeah,
that.
yeah, not you, but
Oh,
but,
yeah,
but
yeah.
you talked
Well,
about having
sure, I don't want my wife to hit. Like, see, you just be
You're like,
hitting.
excuse me.
Oh, you go hit on women?
No, he's
No.
good, Bridget, I promise. But when you go into any situation where when you don't have a death grip on the outcome,
Mm-hmm.
you're able to be so much freer. And then, dude, it's just a magic. It's a thing that happens. It's a chemistry between you and the other people where when you let go a little bit and you don't sweat the small flubs at the top of your set or whatever. Yeah, you absolutely can change.
Yeah, and that's where your funny is.
Mhm.
That's when your natural funny it comes out when you're having a good time.
Yeah.
100%.
Well, Brandon, why don't you, if you have any shows to plug or your socials?
Yeah, I got so social, really, you can just follow me on Instagram at Brennan Robards, Bren Robards. I'll give it to Michael and Drew to put in the tag of the bio or whatever. But I post a lot of comedy stuff with the move going on. I'm, after Monday, which I'm about to plug in a second, I'm not really doing a whole lot as far as I know right now for about a month, just to kind of get myself set up in a new area. But after that, I'll be going back into doing comedy and posting stuff on socials, on my Insta in terms of comedy. One thing I wanted to plug, because I wanted to make a point. First, thank y'all so much for having me on. I appreciate
course.
it. And two, I wanted to plug two like Baton Rouge comics that I think are really putting in work, and I think just want to get some ears and some eyes on them. First one is Jeremy Crawford. He's both of these are Baton Rouge-based comics, but Jeremy Crawford, dude puts in a ton of work. He's putting in like when I started, he is like when I started and doing as many reps as I did when I started. He's doing that now with a full-time job, and he just has a lot of drive. Another dude I wanted to plug, Aaron Heltz. He's a newer comic, but he is really like putting in the work too, um, figuring out like, and this is also props to y'all, figuring out how to be a dad along with having a full time job and doing comedy. But he figured out the time management super early. And they're both, I think they're both great writers, and I think they just deserve some recognition. So I wanted to plug them. In terms of the show on Monday, I forgot to plug. I got Sleepy Train comedy at the Loose Caboose in Lafayette, right?
Yeah, that's right.
So it'll be the four of us, y'all two, myself, and Don Scheck Snyder.
That's right.
So that'll be on Monday. Yeah, so that's pretty much all I got to plug. But yeah, I mean, thank y'all so much for having me on, man. This is awesome.
Dude, good luck, man. Godspeed on the journey. I have a lot of confidence in you in terms of how you're going to do and thrive in your work, and then also as a comic in a new scene. And dude, if the idea that maybe you could help push whatever's there to the next level is actually really exciting too. I want to have you back whenever you're in town. I'm sure it's just inevitably it's going to happen. I mean, dude, Joshua Jordan's only been gone for a short time, and he's come back several times.
He's doing like he's basically doing like dual citizenship. You know what I mean in terms of states. But yeah, man, I'll definitely be back. My family, I still have family out in Baton Rouge and New Orleans, and so I mean, and friends too, and I'll still be visiting. I just need to kind of figure out how I'm going to set up my work schedule and figure out everything outside of that. And it'll be good. But yeah.
And we hope you guys have enjoyed this content and our guest Brennan Robards, and wish him well if you get the opportunity. Yeah, just keep plugging away at it, and we'll see you next week.